The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Thank you, Mr.
Dr.
Speaker.
Megan Woods.
Thank you, and so soon taking a second call on this bill. It's comforting to hear from the Minister that the measure may be joined by another measure to address climate change, because, Mr. Speaker, although we are supporting this single measure, it simply is not going to be enough. The Minister told us that our identity is bound up in our natural landscapes, in our mountains, in our rivers. Well, it's those mountains and those rivers and those glaciers that are being put under threat by the risk we are posing with climate change to our planet. And until the government can join up its thinking on that, we are going to get nowhere. I'd like to put it to the Minister that actually this government's action on climate change is slower than the glacial retreat in this country. That glaciers are retreating in this country, in our own country, at a faster rate. In islands here, Mr. Speaker, at a much faster rate. The Minister talks about what the great difference that this piece of legislation is going to make. Well, the regulatory impact statement for this legislation tells us that it's going to have a 0.7% reduction on net emissions in New Zealand by the impact at in 2020 at each price. So, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the effort that New Zealand has to make to meet its post-Paris and its pre-Paris commitments around emission reductions, this is a tiny drop in the bucket. This simply isn't enough. And if this is all the government's got, we're in trouble. Because, Mr. Speaker, 0.7 reduction in our emissions is simply tiny. This government took to Paris and put on the table a 30% reduction on 2005 levels of emissions, an 11% reduction on 1990 levels. More action is going to be required.
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. The time has come for me to leave the chair for the dinner break. This debate is interrupted and I shall resume the chair at 7:30.